It's time for Michael Penix to justify that pick, baby. Let's go.
This is the Atlanta Sports Party, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Sports Party, your home for the best Atlanta sports talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Jarvis Davis and Maria Martin. The Atlanta Sports Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Braves have said hello to a couple of old friends recently, but should they say goodbye to another one? We'll talk about that and download on some preseason action with a special guest from Locked On Dolphins. But first, let's talk about if Penix has something to prove. So, Maria, Michael Penix is in line to start the Atlanta Falcons' first preseason game Friday when the Falcons take on the Miami Dolphins. Now, with Kirk Cousins not likely to get any preseason action, especially Friday night, is this possibly a chance for Penix, if he starts, if he's a ghost, to prove something once he takes the field, if you actually think he has something to prove?
I don't think that he necessarily has anything to prove. I think if there was anything for him to prove, it would be you guys made the right choice in drafting me in the first round. That would be the only thing that would solidify it. But he's had such a good camp. I've seen a lot of different articles that are kind of sensationalizing the way that camp has shook out. Kirk is clear in a way the first quarterback. Okay, let me be very clear about that. I don't want to mince my words. He is the starting quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, and he's going to continue to be. And I don't think that not playing him in the preseason has anything to do with this Achilles injury. I simply think we don't want to risk anything at all with our starting quarterback that we spent so much money on. He's healthy. Mm-hmm. He's jogging around. He looks really, really good. And he's pretty much ahead of schedule when it comes to his injury, which is a great thing. So for Michael Penix, just show us that it was justified that you were a first-round draft pick. I do believe that he can do that. You are going to see some growing pains. That's what happens with any quarterback when they get into an NFL game for the very first time. So it's a good thing for Penix to get reps in this scenario because, to be honest with you, if everything goes the way that they want it to with Kirk Cousins, I don't know how much of Michael you're going to see during the regular season. And that's a good thing because that means their plan with Kirk is folding out how it should in front of our eyes. So I think if anything, it's just tell us that you're the quarterback that we all think that you are, because I think he's fantastic and he's had a really good camp.
And Jarvis, for you, is this possibly a chance for Penix to prove something if you actually think he has something to prove?
To be honest with you, I'm kind of like on the same page as Maria, but I think with a different caveat, right? I think for the most part, I feel like Michael Penix within himself, and I think the fan base wants to see why they took him in with the eighth overall pick, right? Because you spent $100 million in guarantees for Kirk Cousins, and I feel like from what I've seen why, just being out there in practice and seeing it live for myself and like, oh yeah, it's one thing for people to tell you that he has a live arm and he's super accurate and you're able to see it in a college football game, but to be able to see it in person with your own eyes and you understand how he can make wide receivers better because he's going to put the ball in the right place so they can go get those yak yards, right? So I think for the most part, this is going to be a situation where Michael MPX, I feel like he's going to be able to prove things to himself. And also he's going to prove to the fan base like, hey, man, it's a reason why they took me here. It's a reason why they got on the private jet to come out here and to come see me and understand just to confirm what they've been seeing on tape. So I feel like we're in for a nice treat on Friday night against the Miami Dolphins because I feel like MPS is gonna have some things that he's going to be able to confirm and not necessarily prove, right?
Now, JG, who might actually be on a prove-it mission, Kyle Pitts. Kirk Cousins mentioned after practice in Miami that he's constantly giving KP coaching points. So for you, will Cousins maybe be that guy who will help us to see once again what Pitts is actually capable of?
Absolutely. Because here's the thing. We saw with the 1,000-yard season that he had as a rookie, and then he was hampered by injuries, and he still was injured for the most part when he tried to play last year in 2023. Yeah. So when you have all of those factors coming into play, and a lot of people were wondering like, oh, is he lazy? Is he not running his routes right, or is he kind of just not like questioning like his whole work ethic and character and all that stuff? So when you think about it from that standpoint, it's just like, all right, what is this dude? Because you drafted him 4th overall and you picked up his 5th-year option. You mean tell me you're going to pay this dude $15 million when he barely got, the amount that he got in his rookie year in the past 2 years combined. So when you think about it from that standpoint, yeah, I feel like Kirk is going to be able to get him there, because anytime you talk about an inch better than what you had last year or the last 2 years, you
Indeed.
gotta say that Kirk is going to be that guy, right? Because we understand Kirk is miles ahead of the guys that have been here before. I try not to mention those guys' names on this show because I don't want to get into all that. But I want to bring up no bad memories. But when you think about what Kirk brings to the table, I feel like ultimately he's going to be one of the main factors as to why Kyle Pitts is going to have a nice season this year.
Yeah, and Marie, you can't help it. Like, you think about what's been under center the last couple of years and you get triggered. And then when you think about the bookends of what was there, Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins, you have to be encouraged that this is going to be an opportunity for KP to reset and for us to see what he's really about and what some do consider to be a proven season for him.
One thing I've noticed about Kyle in camp is that there was a different demeanor about him. And just from an outsider's perspective, and, we don't get to talk to him a ton during camp, but when we do, you can just tell things are different from here. And it's a different confidence. It's a different, okay, I feel like I can have a monster season that everybody feels like I can, because he has that much confidence in his quarterback. And he has spoken very highly of Kirk, and as he should. And I think one thing to mention in the Michael Penix versus the Michael Penix versus Kirk Cousins thing is that Kirk has the ability to be a little bit more experimental in camp. And what I mean by that is he's the one that can throw a ball that's going to force his receivers to go get it. So sometimes when you're not really watching, you think, oh, that's on the quarterback. Well, not necessarily. He's forcing his guys to do things so that they can prove themselves as well. He's doing that with Kyle Pitts. He's pushing him beyond what Kyle has shown us in the last couple of years, albeit a lot of it's because of injury, but that's because he knows the kind of receiver tight end that Kyle Pitts can be. And so sometimes that does make Michael Penix look a little bit better than Kirk, just because for him, it's, I need to go out and be perfect on every play. For Kirk, it's, I need to figure out what I can get away with on game day with these receivers. So it is a little bit different. So that's a perspective I just wanted to put out there for everybody who's saying Michael Penix is better than Kirk and more accurate. And I don't necessarily think that that's true. But anyways, I do think that Kyle is going to have a monster season. He fits so well into this offense and what I think Zach Robinson will be able to come up with for this offense. And I think you can expect to see a totally different Kyle, even better than the one you saw that you mentioned, Jarvis, a couple of years ago. I think this is a monster season loading for KP.
And I think that, Kirk is going to be a bigger part of it because of, him having such a big understanding or a good understanding of this offense and knowing where people are supposed to be. Because there's one thing to say, hey, I need you to run this route, blah, 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 blah. But, hey, I need you to be right here at that 10 to 12 mark, or because as soon as you put your foot down, that ball is going to be there and it's going to be on you, and it's going to be on you really quickly because that linebacker is going to be sitting right there. So like when you start getting into that next level, that PhD level of football understanding, that's why I feel like, it's almost like kind of like what you talked about, Maria. It's almost kind of he's walking around enlightened. You know how sometimes when people don't really read that much and they start reading books, they just want to talk about it all the time. That's kind of how I feel like Kyle Pitts is when you kind of talk to him and kind of interact with him and talk to him about Kirk and what he's been doing for him. So, and Kirk is just excited. That's the cool thing about it too, to be able to interact with him. Like, hey man, I need you to run fast. Did you run fast on this play? Hey, did you do what you were supposed to do on this particular play? Because, hey man, you're different. You got to understand that you're different, and the expectation level is higher, much higher than regular tight end. So, with the unicorn nickname coming in, hey man, I love that Kirk is actually pushing him to live up to that.
Now, Maria, there was an unfortunate turn of events Wednesday. Rondale Moore suffered what appeared to be a serious leg injury, was carted off the field during the joint practice with the Dolphins. Now was being evaluated at the practice facility. Ultimately, the players took a knee. Practice ended early. Now, of course, we definitely hope and pray Moore will be okay. Hope to see more of him, no pun intended, because he's listed as the number 2 slot receiver on the team's first official depth chart that was released this week. But prior to Wednesday, for you, what have you seen from Rondale that you hope to see again in camp and maybe some more in this preseason?
Yeah, I will say, unfortunately, aircast is never a good thing. And just the way, I didn't see it because I wasn't there, but just the way that it was described does not make me think that he will be playing this year. I don't want to speculate. We hope that he's back and we hope that it's something not so serious, but it did sound incredibly serious, which is terrible because Rondale Moore has had such a good camp. He's one of those guys who's flashed a lot of the times. He's quick. He can get anywhere you need him to. And he's someone that I think has a lot to prove to himself. And he's been able to do that in camp so far. So I hated to hear that, especially because the depth at receiver for this team is one of the key points and the key components as to why we think this offense is going to be so good. Rondale Moore was another piece of that. It just means there's going to be more people that have opportunities. But unfortunately, this was a big piece to the offense. And I hope it's not missing. I hope it's not as bad as it seems. But I guess they're just going to have to figure out who can step up in his absence.
And for me, I feel like, Rondale Moore had gotten built a nice rapport with Michael Penix Jr. And to be honest with you, like Ray McCloud had really solidified himself in that third wide receiver spot. And I just love the fact that you're going to miss out on that competition, because if they bring someone in, I don't feel like there's enough time for them to kind of unseat Ray McCloud as that third wide receiver in the pecking order, right? So for me, I feel like that's what I'll probably miss with Rondale Moore. Hopefully he's not out for a long period of time, but like Maria mentioned, anytime you get an air cast put on that bad boy, it's for a reason. And more than likely it's going to be something that's going to be long term, but hoping for the best.
Yeah, hoping for the best indeed, because you want Kirk Cousins to have as many weapons as possible. And I think, too, when you have players around you who are kind of in the same situation as you are, maybe for a different reason, but the same situation that you are, because you're kind of in prove-it mode, it always bodes well and in the positive for the team. So, again, we definitely have our thoughts and prayers with Rondale and hope that despite what it looked like, he'll be able to come back and be productive for this Falcons team this season. When we come back, we'll download on some preseason action in the deep dive. This episode of our Atlanta Sports Party is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and all of the above. In fact, there's a businessman special for the Atlanta Braves today. Maybe you can get a quick deal with Game Time for that last game in the Braves-Brewers series, where the Braves will be trying to escape a sweep. Also, flash deals save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. And there are zone deals that save you even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create the account after you download the Game Time app, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. So go ahead, after we wrap up Atlanta Sports Party, download Game Time today for last minute tickets and lowest prices guaranteed. Friday is upon us. Preseason is upon us. And Jim Grieshaber has joined us because Dolphins Falcons is upon us as well. So Grease, of course, is our host of the Locked On Dolphins POSTCAST. And the Dolphins and Falcons are getting set for both of their first tilt in preseason for 2024. So for you, Grease, what have you seen so far from a very high-powered Dolphins offense camp, especially in joint practices, or even what you've seen from the Falcons that you also look forward to seeing come Friday?
Well, we're not going to see what everybody's looking forward to seeing with the Dolphins. And thank you guys very much for having me. I love the show. I appreciate you. And Tenitra, I love working with you always. But, Tua's not going to play. 212 million reasons why the first preseason game. He's one of the highest paid quarterbacks on planet Earth. And they're easing in with training camp. And you have injuries like Jalen Waddle and Odell Beckham and Braxton Berrios, who are three of those receivers that they're counting on so much. And then Tyreek Hill's not going to play. I mean, the thing about the Dolphins that everybody talks about, right, heading into the season, is speed. I mean, you have got 7, 8 guys on this team. 8 guys, 7 who run a sub 4.4. 7 guys who run a sub 4.4, and then slow Jalen Ramsey, old grandpa over there, at a 4.41, right? So everybody knows it's going to be speed for the Dolphins, and that kills on a football field. So they're going to be able to score from anywhere. They're going to be able to run back, some punts and kicks and things like that, but nobody's going to run back kicks. But what I think about the Dolphins, I think about speed, and I think about what you're really waiting for is under that hood, just kind of like when you get that new car, right? And you test it. And so many times in South Florida, we see it, people with their Lambos, people with their Bugattis. Well, you have to step on the gas to make that car worth it, right? You spend all that money on that car. You don't want to go 5 miles an hour up and down Ocean Drive all night. I mean, that looks good, but you want to take that puppy out and you want to bang it to the floor. And that's what they want Tua to do. So far, they've kind of eased into it in practice. We're not going to see it in the game. Those guys aren't going to play. But there are a lot of battles going on in camp, and there are a lot of players who are trying to make a name for themselves, especially the biggest question mark for the Dolphins coming into the season. I don't care how much speed you have. I don't care how good your quarterback is, and Tua's going to take all the heat and all the credit because that goes with the nature of the position, especially in South Florida when you had Dan Marino here for so long and you haven't had anybody since. And they think Tua could be that guy. But no one's going to be anything without the offensive line. And to me, that's the biggest thing in camp is the offensive line, because that's the key to the success of the team is up front. It always is.
Well, Jim, when you think about it, or I can call you Grease, whatever you feel comfortable there. One of the things that I've always been a big proponent of is the offensive line and the defensive line. I want to kind of start with the offensive line where you kind of just mentioned. So talked about 212 million reasons, right, to be able to, satisfy Tua and make sure that he's where he needs to be as far as, being able to get the ball in the hands of all of those track guys that you mentioned. Do you feel like they did enough up front for the offensive line to protect Tua so he won't be in a space where we're wondering whether or not he's going to be in those games? I know he had a healthy season last year, but how can they continue that, or did they do enough to be able to continue that in 2024?
Yeah, and it wasn't completely healthy, right? And a couple of years ago was really bad. And so that's the thing with the backup quarterback position, and I'm sure that everybody's going to want to talk about that, with Mike White and Skylar Thompson. And people love Skylar Thompson for some reason. Dolphin fans love to cling to like the Ray Lucases of the world. When Fiedler was bombing, they're like, oh, Ray Lucas, he's going to win. And now it's Skylar Thompson. He's better than Tua. No, he's not. Calm down. He's not. Dolphin fans can be extremely delusional. I don't know if Falcon fans drink the same Kool-Aid or not. But yeah, the Dolphins, same Kool-Aid, right? And Kirk Cousins still has no mobility. It's like, relax, man. They haven't played a game yet. I love that one. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't think they did enough. They're ranked 18th at best going into the season. I've seen them 18th to about 23rd and 31 sacks last year. But people say the offensive line was very good when they say they only allowed 31 sacks. I'm going to go the other way and tell you that's the offense. I'm going to go the other way and tell you that's Tua. I'm going to go the other way and tell you that's getting rid of the ball very quickly to get it to your weapons. So I think the Dolphins have a lot to prove on the offensive line. They have incredible speed at the running back position with 2 guys who can change the game themselves when everybody's talking about Tua and the receivers. So the offensive line right now is a giant question mark. All 5 of those guys should be running out there in Riddler costumes instead of uniforms tonight.
Grace, I want to go back to the speed that you were talking about on offense for the Dolphins. And we are going to see some of that on display on Friday whenever they take on the Falcons. And for Falcons fans, they are looking at the DBs. They want to know how they match up against speed. And that's been a big point of contention down there in South Florida. Tyreek Hill gave A.J. Terrell a whole lot of praise in their matchups. So what have you seen with those matchups that maybe encourages you on your side, maybe Falcons fans should look out for on Friday?
Well, the biggest guns aren't going to play. So you'll see, Anthony Schwartz is fast, and you'll see him. And Willie Snead just came in too. And he's moving up the depth chart as a receiver with the Dolphins. But Barrios isn't going to play. Odell Beckham, Jalen Waddle, and, of course, Tyreek Hill, and then Tua. And then I think the top 2 running backs are sitting as well for this one. So you're seeing everything you're going to see in those practices in those last few minutes when they let the media in. You're seeing everything you're going to see, right? And you see the air quotes because you're going to see nothing because they don't let you see anything when the eyes can get in there and see the end of practice. It's kind of by design, right? You guys know. So the Dolphins, you can't keep that kind of speed under wraps. But I was encouraged with the way that the Falcons have been going at it and the way that they played that speed. And then, of course, it gets chippy, right? All those little fracases and little dust-ups in camp. And what has it been, 3 times already that those two teams kind of went at it with one another? So hopefully it won't happen during the game. They got it out of their system.
And one thing that, talk about the up front, right? Because Christian Wilkins, they allow him to go, get the bag somewhere else, out to the West Coast.
Yep.
Do you feel like they have enough to be able to replace that productivity that Christian Wilkins brought to the table?
Well, man, I'll tell you what. I mean, can anybody? That's the question. I mean, and they let a lot of players go. They let a lot of homegrown players go. And Dolphin fans hate that, and when you let a guy in the middle like that go, and he's 28, man. He's hitting his prime. And so that's a tough one. Anytime you let a guy like that go. I love that they brought in Calais Campbell, maybe just because I'm an old head and I love Calais, and I was there when he played at the University of Miami producing the Randy Shannon show. And this is a while back now. That's how long he's been in the NFL. Certainly don't expect him to replace his on that defensive line. But the key is there, I mean, when you're getting pressure on quarterbacks, it's around the edge. And I really think that Jalen Phillips is going to be he's going to take another big step up this year. And people love him in camp right now. And I think a name to look at, I mean, I will say that, I mean, it's tough to look at. Bradley Chubb, I like Bradley Chubb a lot. And I think he's going to do some things this year. And he's a first-round pick in 2018. And I think that this year is going to be a year that he really takes a step up. That's the thing about the NFL. There's always a guy who's ready to take a step up when someone else goes. So spread it around a little bit on that defensive front, make some plays, get those offenses off the field, get the ball back into his hands, get that offense going. And the biggest key for them with this offensive line, guys, the biggest key is going to be that quickness of the offense, because the defense is not going to be that big of a playmaking unit. And I don't think that they're going to be that much of a ball hawking unit either. I don't think they're going to have a ton of picks, a ton of turnovers forced on defense. I think they'll be steady. I think they'll be solid. But the offense is obviously where they're spending the money, and that's where they're hoping that, that's where everything's going to happen, is on the offensive side of the football with all that speed.
Well, we may not see the big guns, Tua Tagovailoa or Kirk Cousins, come Friday, but it sounds like to me the Dolphins and Falcons have some similarities in that there are some players that we're going to be eyeing up front, whether that's in the trenches on the offensive or defensive side of the ball, and some good position battles. So still an intriguing matchup on Friday. Jim Grieshaber from Locked On Dolphins, the postcast. Thank you so much for stopping by, and definitely have a good season on the postcast.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Falcons and Dolphins. Hey, whenever football's here, right, it's a big win for all of us. The dog days are over. Here we go.
Indeed. I don't know if the dog days are over for us on the Braves side of the ball. Over in baseball, the Braves have had to say hello, or said hello to a couple of friends recently, but maybe should they have to say goodbye to another? And we'll talk about it when we go around the Metro. Locked On Sports Today is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the noise. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So it's been up, it's been down. It's been a roller coaster all over the place this season for the Braves. There seems to be growing sentiment because of that from Braves country that maybe it's time to move on from Brian Snitker. Now, even with Chris Sale on the mound Wednesday, the Braves could not figure out a way to win. They fell 8-5 in game 2 of that series against the Brewers. So Jarvis Snit he tried to show a little spark, got tossed, arguing a call strike against Jorge Solair. That didn't really impact the final result ultimately. So for you, where did it all go wrong? Where's it gone wrong in this series? And are you one of those people that feels like it's fair to call for Snit to move on or not?
I feel like it started off with Chris Sale having a lot of guys just on base. He was able to get out of a couple pinches early on, and then it just eventually caught up with him, because it's just something about this Brewers team. I don't know. It just stinks to me from a Atlanta fan standpoint. It's like, man, why did these dudes just don't want to go away? So, but I think overall, when you talk about the whether or not Snit should be around, I feel like I'm not saying that he should be fired, but there needs to be a conversation between he and Alex Anthopoulos about how much longer does he want to do this, or how much fire do you have in you to be able to continue to do this, to be able to meet this standard of trying to go World Series or bust, because the players already feel like that. Like, do you have enough in you to continue to convey that message, or be the guy to jump in from time to time and say, hey man, I need y'all mother blankets to get right. That's kind of what it is. That's where we are in this situation, because we're about 69 games left in the season. So like the Braves who they thought we thought they were, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's who they are right now. We gotta believe what we're seeing right now. So for me, I feel like, I'm not saying we should fire Snit. I'm not saying the Braves should fire Snit, because I can't fire Snit. But we definitely should. There should be some conversations about what his future looks like and how he feels what that should look like going forward.
Yeah, this is really tricky. So you guys, I don't know about you. Do you guys get motion sick?
No, luckily.
Time.
Okay, so the older that I get, the more motion sick I get. And it's kind of reminiscent of what the Braves are doing to me right now. Like, the deeper we get into the season, the more motion sickness I feel, because they are just sloshing everybody all over the place. It's funny because you said there's been expectations, and we thought that they would surge, and we thought they would do something really good. And that's not to say that they still can't do that. You mentioned there is a whole lot of games left in the season, but when the margin for error is so razor thin when it comes to the wild card race, and even the top of the division, because the Phillies had a really long stretch of just abnormality for them and what they've been able to do this year. It was 5.5 games at one point. The Braves can't really do what they're doing. And so they do have to find something somewhere. It's not coming from Brian Snitker. It's not coming from clearly any of the guys on that roster. Chris Sale, it's fine. I'm not upset that he had an off night. It was his second shortest outing of the season. People have off nights. It is what it is. It's a pesky lineup for the Brewers team. It really didn't discourage me that he had a rough outing. It's fine. People have bad outings in baseball. Right, sake. Exactly. What's more concerning to me is not Chris Sale. It's the rest of the team. You're seeing issues in the outfield with Jorge Solair. You're seeing a whole lot of moves basically because of the injuries, and that's not the Braves' fault. So I just need something. I need them to dig deep and find something somewhere, because we see a lot of highs and then we never, ever see them capitalize on that. It's up, 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 and then straight down. No plateau, no continual climb. It is like hot or cold. There's no in between. And that is not the recipe for success in the postseason. Now, when it comes to Snit, this is very long-winded, but I have a lot to say about the Braves. When it comes to Snit, I would not say it's worthy of him being fired this year. I think those conversations are going to start to ramp up if they miss the postseason, if it's more of the same, especially when you look at what kind of team the Braves have on paper. They should be doing a lot better. And we all do know and understand that. But it's baseball. People get hurt. It is what it is. Or to take Snit's phrase, it's just baseball. But I think that those conversations are going to heat up probably if they miss the postseason this year. And certainly if next year they just don't do what we think they're very capable of.
Yeah. And I'm thinking the same, like just a couple things there. First of all, it makes me think about like, you're a good relationship, right? Or an up and down relationship. Like, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Lauryn Hill and the X Factor. That's what it makes me feel like. Like, this could all be so simple, but you'd rather make it hard. This is life in Braves. I just, that's what it makes me like, Maria and I are just the backup singers here, but I really feel like that's what it is. It's like they make it so difficult, but this could be really, really simple if you just get to the plate and just hit the daggone ball, because Sale should be allowed, Maria, at this point to have a bad outing. He has been a part of it along with Rondale Lopez before he went down. They've been pretty much the reason, along with Marcell Ozuna, but I'm talking about from a pitching rotation perspective. They have been holding up this team. So he is allowed to have a bad outing. If he does, however, where are you guys? See, like that's how it goes with like good relationship, bad relationships. Like when it's 80-20, at some point it needs to go 70-30 or it needs to go 60-40. And I'm going to move on because obviously I'm probably triggered. But anyway, then I think
what's going on in your personal life?
Yeah. Tell us about it, T.
Are you okay?
I know, right? Are you okay? You need a hug? So Brian Snitker, when I think about him and the word firing, let go, move on in the same sense, I'm not with yet. I'm not with yet because there were so many moments in time, especially in 2021, where he was just patient to stay the course with some of the players and it panned out. This will not be 2021. I know that. I don't believe it will be. But my point being, I think he has earned the right to get through a horrific season like what we've had based on the expectations for the Braves and being, to Maria's point, given an opportunity to come back next year. I think if next year we're having the same conversation, then maybe I'll feel otherwise. But yeah, I don't think you can move on with all of what Brian Snitker has meant to this Braves organization, not just to help them to get back to the World Series and to win it, but all of the years that he had to suffer while they were building back to that. Now, the Braves are continuing to try to right the ship. They announced today they DFA'd Eddie Rosario, recalled Eli White, selected writer Parker Dunshee, optioned Dylan Dodd, and maybe trying to at least show some support for Solair, as you mentioned, Maria, just struggling in the outfield last night, albeit hasn't played in the outfield all season. So there's that. We kind of knew this might happen. But how concerned are you guys about whether or not these moves will even make a difference now that the Braves have fallen behind the D-backs and Padres in the NL wild card race just by a couple of games, but nonetheless have kind of had a little slippage there?
Wake me up on the 14th when they bring back Michael Harris to second. I mean, that's where I'm at now with it. T bringing up Eli White and James Lariano or whatever his doggone name is. I'm tired of the riffraffs. Can we get the names, people? Get I know Ronald Acuna not coming back, nephew not coming back. I get that, I understand that, but let's get Michael Harris back into the situation, ease back into the lineup. Solair, I need you to make up for all the little fumbling and bumbling and stumbling you did out in the outfield. At the plate, I need you to make it up there. And yeah, I feel like the Braves, they should be fine. You know, I had to put that caveat in there. But yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
Should be. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the outfield, I mean, really the majority of the year, it's been a hodgepodge of guys who aren't used to the roles that they're playing in. And so when you do that, you're going to have issues. And as you mentioned, Ronald Acuna is not coming back, but then you have a weird rotation of guys in right. And then you have Michael Harris, who's not in center field. Getting him back just gives you that stability. And Jorge Solair, to your point, Tenitra, Alex Anthopoulos and Brian Snitker both said we understood that he hadn't played outfield to this point this year, and we understood that there were going to be some growing pains. The issue with that, and I see it and I hear it, but the issue with that is there's not a whole lot of time left for there to be so many growing pains. You can have a couple, but the games that I've seen from him, that's gotta be nipped in the bud and pretty quick because they have not been good in the outfield. And it's frustrating whenever you have guys who are doing very well on the mound and you don't have run support, and then your outfield is faltering too. That puts a lot of pressure on these pitchers where Chris Sale has an off night and everyone's freaking out. That shouldn't be the case. And so I think Jorge Solair really has to turn something around very quickly. And hopefully when Michael Harris comes back, he is as good as we think he is and can be. Now, granted, he's had his struggles at the plate so far this season too. Name a Brave that hasn't. There has not been one consistent hitter from the beginning to this point. So, you know, he may have some growing pains when he comes back too. It's just there's not a lot of room for error anymore. So they have to figure out where things fit. I think getting guys back in their original places in the outfield will help a whole lot of that.
Well, they've got an opportunity today to make the businessman special. So do something, Braves. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Sports Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Hawks for your second listen. And be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also free and available wherever you download your podcasts. We will see you on the Atlanta Football Party Monday.